Justice knows no sleep. Indoril shall order, the temple shall judge. Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni, I'm Neloth, and allow me to introduce to you the Indoril Templar build. A Dunmer that belongs to both the Great House Indoril and the new Temple of Morrowind, who zealously worships the three good Daedra, Azura, Boethia, and Mephala, and traverses the lands of Skyrim and Solstheim on a never-ending quest to destroy the evil, selfish, and heretical, and to prove himself to his house and ancestors, without compromise. He is a holy Templar, but much different than your average divines-worshipping Templar, as the Indoril Templar has deep relations with the good Daedra and conjuration magic. If you are looking for a Dark Knight build, but with less edginess and a deep Morrowind aesthetic, this is the build for you. This build was inspired by my House Indoril lore video I made recently and is a combination of both the Ordinators and the skills favored by the Tribunal Temple from the game Morrowind. Before I begin, this is a modded build, and I will leave all the mods used in the description down below. However, I will also give options for more vanilla players as well. But the mods used are minimalistic mods like Vokri perks, Morningstar races, Evenstar standing stones, and Wintersun faiths, all of which have been made by Ination. Mods that simply enhance Skyrim and make it more refreshing, but not changing it so much it becomes a completely different game. With all that said, let us start with the race, stats, and standing stone. The Indoril Templar will naturally be a Dark Elf or Dunmer and will have two beneficial racial perks. The first is being Resist Fire, giving the Indoril Templar a 50% resistance to fire, which will be handy against dragons and mages. And the second being Spite, which says, your vengeful Dunmer spirit improves weapons and elemental damage by up to 30% below half health, which will be useful when trapped in a corner, but we won't be utilizing it too much as we will be a walking tank with flesh spells and healing magic, so we won't be getting to half health much to begin with. For the attributes, which are our magicka, health, and stamina, every time you level up, you are able to increase one attribute by 10 points. And so, for every 5 levels you advance, 2 levels should go into magicka, which will be helpful for many defensive spells we cast, 2 should go into health as it will be important for tanking even the most hard-hitting blows enemies will deal in the game, and 1 in stamina as it will be nice to do some power attacks, but stamina isn't super important for this build. I would only recommend at most putting 10 levels into stamina and then focusing purely on magicka and health. For the standing stone, we will be selecting the Lord Stone, which will be increasing our armor by 75 points and magic resistance by 25%. This will be useful more in the beginning of the game as we won't have the highest armor rating, but in the end game, while armor won't be as useful as we will have easily surpassed the armor cap with smithing and alteration, the magic resistance we get will be very welcome. And with our investments in alteration, we will be achieving a flat 55% resistance to all magic. And that's before any enchantments and additional perks like our fire resistance. The Lord Stone will also be nice for role-playing reasons as well, since House Indoril during the First and Second Era ruled over the other great houses and lorded over them. The Indoril lording over everyone else can also be seen on Indoril's banner, which is a pair of wings, which symbolically shows House Indoril flying high above the rest of the Dunmer. So simply put, the Lord Stone is perfect for this character, however you could also select the Lover Stone in the early game, which will allow all skills to improve 15% faster, which is great for leveling and becoming more powerful more quickly. I also want to touch on the Wintersun mod, which adds another layer to Skyrim by making faith and prayer an important gameplay mechanic that can give us beneficial perks related to our chosen deity. Many Dunmer in the Fourth Era no longer worship the old Tribunal gods and have reverted to worshipping the three good Daedra, Azura, Boethia, and Mephala. And while the Indoril Templar will worship and respect all of the good Daedra, I feel that he would have a deeper connection with Azura, as I will showcase in the backstory. Azura is closely associated with magic and also to Lord Indoril Nerevar and the Nerevarine who saved Morrowind from the blight and the weakness of the Tribunal. It also helps that the statistical bonuses for following Azura can be helpful for the Indoril Templar. For example, when praying at her shrines, you can gain a plus 10% resistance to magic, which is always handy. As a follower, we gain the perk Twilight Shroud, where enemies within 40 feet suffer reduced magic resistance based on our favor with Azura, and they also can't absorb spells. While we won't be casting destruction spells ourselves, we will be summoning Atronachs that will, and they will be able to deal even more damage. Lastly, as a devotee, the Perfume of Moonshadow will allow us to activate a person in combat below a certain amount of health and paralyze them. This will give us the advantage by instantly taking down a powerful foe while we focus on the weaker enemies. To gain favor with Azura, trap souls in her name, explore new locations, pray only at twilight, preferably outside. Dark elves and those skilled in illusion are most deserving of her favor. So now that we have gone through some of the statistics and focuses for the Indoril Templar, I believe it is time we got more familiar with him on a personal level and share his backstory. To give you a better idea of who the Indoril Templar is. His name is Sorin Orethi, and he was born in the year 100 of the Fourth Era, in an age where Morrowind had been irreversibly changed by apocalypse after apocalypse. The Oblivion Crisis, the Red Year, the Accession War, and the abandonment of the Tribunal. Many Dunmer spent their lives rebuilding what was once lost, and the parents of Sorin were no exception. They were both lowly carpenters that lived in Mournhold and worked to rebuild the city along with many priests within the new temple who provided relief to the poor and sickly. Sorin grew up learning the carpentry trade, however he also grew to idolize the new temple and their generosity. He would often go to the Mournhold temple and listen to the canon speak of how the good Daedra, the true teachers of the Dunmer people, have reclaimed their station from the false Tribunal, and how the calamities that Morrowind suffered were the consequences of worshipping those who should only be revered as saints, and that such consequences were designed to be teachable moments and lessons meant to make the Dunmer people stronger. While Sorin loved his parents and worked hard to aid them in their work, he knew in his heart he wanted to join the new temple fully and not pursue a life as a carpenter, so that he could help his people beyond Mournhold and spread the word of the reclamations to all who had ears to hear. When Sorin turned 16, his parents let him join the new temple as a novice, where he would leave Mournhold and go on pilgrimages all over Morrowind, to visit the wise Ashlanders and find many Daedric temples and shrines dedicated to the good Daedra. And it was during these pilgrimages that Sorin caught the eye of the archcanon named Eris Sorioni, who was around 30 years old and the youngest archcanon in over 1,000 years. Eris saw in Sorin a true believer, not just in mind and faith, but also in strength and endurance, a holy soldier. Eris took Sorin in and taught him everything he knew about the reclamations, the ancestors, and even of House Indoril, the great house that he was a high-ranking member of. And more importantly, Eris told Sorin of his dreams to reforge the now disbanded Ordinators and create a new order of holy guards and priest soldiers loyal to the new temple and also to House Indoril, an order known as the Bone Saints, an order that Eris wanted Sorin to lead. And Sorin latched onto every word that Eris said, as he was humbled that someone of such an esteemed position would think so highly of him. and he vowed to serve the Archcanon and do whatever he could to make sure his vision for the future would become a certainty. At the age of 20, Soren had been taught the arts of war by some of the best teachers Eris could find, many of whom were once Ordinators and buoyant armigers that were too old to serve themselves. By 25, he had graduated from the Shad Astula Academy, a school in Morrowind that taught writing, leadership, military strategy, and the arcane arts to leaders of the Great Houses. At 26, he had reached near the same rank within House Indoril as Eris and was seen as royalty and a great religious leader within Morrowind. And when he turned 27, Soren took his place next to Eris as the Archbone Saint and spent the next 70 years serving honorably in his position, serving both the reclamations and Eris dutifully. Soren carried out relief efforts to areas of Morrowind still suffering from decades-old calamities and slew Argonians and Reaver raiders that would occasionally come in from the south. He also suppressed any heretical worship that defied the new temple, be them cultists from the House of Troubles, those that served Malakath, Dagon, Molagbal, or Sheogorath, or heretics that still held on to the false tribunal and worked to undermine the reclamations. 70 years Soren served and never wavered, but as he and the Bone Saints grew, he realized he had become too comfortable in his position. He would go on fewer and fewer missions personally at the insistence of Eris and the other Bone Saints, and found himself pushing papers and signing forms more and more every day, which he found to be miserable. While Soren was proud of his work, he realized he had outgrown his position as a Bone Saint and desired to leave his position and serve the reclamations in a new way. Soren told Eris, a Dunmer he considered to be his brother, and he reluctantly gave Soren his blessing to depart. Soren chose one of his best Bone Saints to succeed him, and then he journeyed out on yet another pilgrimage, just like he did when he first joined the new temple as a novice. But this time, he did not just visit the temples and shrines within Morrowind, but also followed the stars of Azura outside of Morrowind and into Cyrodiil, a war-torn continent that was eerily similar to the Morrowind he remembered as a child. He visited the shrines of Azura, Boethia, and Mephala that existed in Cyrodiil and had long conversations with the priests who worshipped them that were not of Dunmeri descent. When traveling north into Bruma, he remembered hearing stories of Dunmer refugees that had built a massive shrine to Azura in Skyrim, something Soren really wanted to see. And so he traveled through the Pale Pass into the land of the Nords. But before he could make it out of the snow-infested mountains, he was happened upon by Imperials that demanded his surrender. Soren had no love for the Empire and was prepared to fight back, but he felt a chill on his neck, and a thought that wasn't his own urging him to surrender. Knowing that he was weary from his travels, had few supplies, and was sorely outnumbered, he gave in and listened to this voice and surrendered himself to the mongrel dogs of the Empire. He was then thrown onto a cart, surrounded by men whom he did not know, and was bound for Helgen. And you know the rest. When the Indoril Templar comes to, he will be quite disappointed that he was captured by the same Imperials that abandoned his homeland before he was born, and will also feel that leaving his duties behind in Morrowind was not what the reclamations wanted, and that his execution would be his punishment. Yet those beliefs would be erased the second a dragon arrives and razes Helgen to the ground. The Indoril Templar will escape with Ralof not because he is fond of the Nords or the Stormcloak Rebellion, but because he has a strong disdain for the Empire, like many Dunmer born in Morrowind. For the sake of duty and justice, the Indoril Templar will make his way to Whiterun and inform the city of the dragon attack, and assist until he discovers he is in indeed dragonborn. Everyone around him will claim that he was blessed by foreign gods like Akatosh or Kinnereth, but he will believe that this was the will of Azura, and yet another prophecy similar to that of the Nerevarine prophecies. Because of this, he will absolutely focus on the main quest and learn all he can about the Way of the Voice from the Greybeards and find ways to attach such knowledge to his beliefs on the reclamations. Because he is far from Morrowind, he will be very suspicious of everyone he meets and will look down on the 9 divines and their priests. But the Indoril Templar acknowledges that the people of Skyrim live in a completely different world and don't know any better, and so will be cold but fair towards most non-Dunmer. For factions, the Indoril Templar will join the Companions, College of Winterhold, and the Dawn Guard, but will refuse to have anything to do with the Thieves Guild and will take an active role in destroying the Dark Brotherhood. He sees the Companions as simply a means to an end, a way to earn money honorably and learn more about the Nords while he gains a foothold. But as he advances through the ranks and becomes Codlac Whitemane's protege, he will do what he can to turn the Companions into an honorable and righteous group, and away from the clutches of Hircine. The College of Winterhold will work as well, as the Indoril Templar was an academic that studied at the Shadastula Academy in Morrowind. Here, he will want to learn all he can about the Alteration, Restoration, and even Conjuration schools of magic, and also read as much lore as he can from the college's library. The Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood pretty much stand against everything the Indoril Templar is for, and so he will be opposed to them. Unfortunately, we cannot destroy the Thieves Guild, but leaving them in an impoverished state will be just fine. We can easily destroy the Dark Brotherhood and will do so, however it should be stated that the Indoril Templar is more of a neutral character, and has no qualms with murdering anyone he deems as evil and unjust. Characters like Grelod the Kind and Vasha would be seen by the Indoril Templar as morally corrupt, and the Indoril Templar would believe that the world is better off without their existence and will kill them without any inner conflict. After all, Mephala taught the Dunmer the art of secret murder to kill their enemies. When tackling the civil war between the Stormcloaks and the Empire, the Indoril Templar will actually side with the Stormcloaks. The reason for this is because the Indoril Templar despises the Empire for abandoning Morrowind in their hour of need, which caused no end of suffering for his people. And the Empire's expansion into Morrowind nearly killed his great house of Indoril, and so each Imperial slain is retribution for Indoril's fall from glory. Besides, if the Empire were to regain Skyrim, the Indoril Templar fears that they could set their sights back on Morrowind, which he will not allow. He cares little for the Stormcloaks' cause and dislikes how they treat his people in Windhelm, but the Nords are the enemy he knows. The Dawn Guard is also another perfect faction for the Indoril Templar to join, as many in Morrowind, especially those within the Temple and House Indoril, view vampires as evil creatures that must be purged. And the Indoril Templar will make it one of his holy missions to slay as many vampires as he can find, no matter the cost, and even convince Serana to cure herself of vampirism. The Dragonborn DLC will also be essential, as you will be in a sense returning to Morrowind and aiding the Dunmer people of Ravenrock as best as you can. Aiding the Dunmer of Ravenrock will be similar to why he joined the new temple to begin with, to aid his people as best he can. There is also the Ghosts of the Tribunal Creation Club mod added in the Anniversary Edition that adds a cult dedicated to the false tribunal. And you will want to do your best to either infiltrate this cult, gather information, and alert the new temple authorities, or simply kill them all and claim their relics for yourself and for House Indoril. When it comes to the Daedric Prince quests, the Indoril Templar will absolutely assist the reclamations, as in Azura, Boethia, and Mephala. You do not wish to cross Azura and corrupt her star, as that would go completely against the character's beliefs, and besides, the Star of Azura will be useful, and the follower we gain, Ariana Aeneth, will be the perfect sidekick for the Indoril Templar given her her reverence towards Azura. Because the Indoril Templar is more neutral, he will have no qualms with sacrificing a follower to Boethia and killing people for Mephala. However, he will endeavor to kill only those deserving of death, those whose existence is more of a detriment to the world. Because of this, I would absolutely recommend watching my videos on who to sacrifice to Boethia and Mephala, which I will leave in the description down below. You will want to do your best to avoid the Daedric princes associated with the four corners of the House of Troubles, as in Molag Bal, Mehrunes Dagon, Sheogorath, and Malakath, as helping them will go against the Indoril Templar's beliefs, and there is no way to really backstab these princes aside from Mehrunes Dagon, as you should give the fragments of Mehrunes' razor to the Mythic Dawn Museum instead of reforging the razor. The other Daedric princes don't really hold much notoriety within the Dunmerry pantheon, so feel free to aid or betray the other Daedric princes at your discretion. As you roam around Skyrim, your primary goal first and foremost is to destroy evil and spread Dunmerry justice in both Skyrim and Solstheim, as that is the holy mission and new purpose that the Indoril Templar has found for himself in these cold lands, and will truly feel like he has found himself again. Now that you know about the Indoril Templar's past and his mindset, it is time for us to look at the skills he will be utilizing and the perks we will be selecting. The skills we will be looking at are one-handed, heavy armor, alteration, conjuration, restoration, enchanting, and smithing. These skills are a combination of the favored skills from the Tribunal Temple faction and the favored skills of the Ordinator class, both in the game of Morrowind. In one-handed, we will take one-handed mastery, denting blows 2 of 2, disrupting strike, victory rush, disciplined fighter, and furious strength. We will mostly be using maces as they are the main weapons used by the iconic Ordinators, and the perk selected will be making our maces do even more damage. For heavy armor, we will want heavy armor mastery, heavy armor fit, heavy armor training, matching heavy set, tower of strength, elemental defense, and glancing blows. The iconic Bone Saint armor is a heavy armor set, and we will be wearing the whole thing, especially since the mask, or helmet, is the most iconic part of the outfit. However, if you want to see the Indoril Templar's face, you could also select the Face of Death perk as well. In alteration, we will be taking Alteration Mastery, Mage Armor 1 of 3, Okato's Preparation, Magic Resistance 3 of 3, and Alter Self 2 of 2. For Alter Self, the first time we will be able to raise an attribute by 25 points, and I would select Health. And the second time, we can add 2 resistances, which I chose to be Frost Resistance and Shock Resistance, as they will increase by 25%, and we will already have 50% Fire Resistance due to our Dunmerry blood anyways. Okato's Preparation will also be incredibly important, as it will turn Alteration into a passive skill, as we will no longer need to cast a flesh spell every time we enter combat, as it will be summoned passively at no magicka cost, and it's one of my favorite perks in this entire mod. For Conjuration, we will be investing in Conjuration Mastery, Atromancy, Rift Summoner 1 of 2, Oblivion Stone 2 of 2, Elemental Potency, and Twin Souls. The Tribunal Temple, and likely the new temple, favor Conjuration magic as it allows its worshippers to commune more closely with the good Daedra. And as someone deeply connected to the reclamations, it makes a lot of sense for the Indoril Templar to do the same, and give him a massive advantage on the battlefield. However, while he will be using Conjuration, the Indoril Templar will not be using Necromancy, as unholy necromantic practices are shunned by the Dunmer people, and therefore shunned by the Indoril Templar as well. In Restoration, take the perks Restoration Mastery, Restoration Dual Casting, Mercy, Respite, Eternal Flame, Inner Light, Blessed, and Intervention. While not your standard Templar or Paladin character, the Indoril Templar is still one at his core, and so Restoration will be a necessity. Especially since we want this character to be a walking tank, and Restoration will make us even more invincible along with Alteration. Since we are a religious character, Blessed and Intervention will be especially useful, since our Blessing of Azura will be 50% stronger, meaning more magic resistance. and Intervention is more of a flavor perk but can come in clutch if you take on more enemies than you were prepared for, and also proves that Azura is by your side. For enchanting, we will want Enchanting Mastery, Weapon Enchanter, Soul Enchanter, Armor Enchanter, Regalia Enchanter, and Extra Effect. We will already be incredibly overpowered, however Enchanting will be a nice bonus to make us even tougher and especially make our blows with our mace deal more damage. Last but not least is Smithing, and we will want to take Steel Smithing all the way up to Ebony Smithing. So we can max out our Bone Saint armor and Ebony mace so that they can be stronger than even Daedric and Dragon Bone gear. Now for the weapons and armor. Obviously, for the armor, we will be using the Bone Saint armor added in the Armors of the Velothi Part 2 mod that I simply cannot shut up about, as it just looks fantastic. Not only does the armor and helmet look amazing, but the added cape and banner really separate the armor from any other in the game and the modding community in general. Keep in mind that you are able to add enchantments to your banner and cape, but I would recommend avoiding so as it kind of feels like cheating. Everything about this armor screams new Temple, Ordinator, and House Indoril, which is exactly what we want. And the banner even spells out Indoril in the Daedric alphabet, although it is misspelled and is spelled with an A, so it says Indoril. But I feel that adds to the Crusader aesthetic as it's combining the name Indoril with the Holy Grail, a symbol for those on a holy quest. If you are playing the game without mods, then I would recommend wearing the Hands of the Almalexia armor from the Ghosts of the Tribunal. But attempt to roleplay that you are repurposing the armor and dedicating it to the glory of the reclamations and not to the Saint Almalexia. The weapon we use is the Ebony Mace, but not the regular vanilla one. In the Ghosts of the Tribunal, we can find a unique Ebony Mace that is identical to the Ebony Mace that the Ordinators wielded in Morrowind. Be sure to collect this weapon and use it in your arsenal, especially since it deals more damage than the base game Ebony Mace. Alternatively, you could wield the True Flame Sword, which was the personal sword of Indoril Nerevar, and would be a worthy weapon for one of House Indoril. But if you do so, you will need to respec your one-handed skill to favor swords instead of maces. For spells, we will be using mostly defensive spells, like whatever the most powerful Flesh Cloak spells and healing spells you have at your disposal. But we will be using Conjuration magic, and will be summoning in the late game a combination of Ash and Storm Atronachs, as well as Dremora Lords. Feel free to summon any other type of Atronach in the early to mid game, but avoid using Necromancy at all costs. Shouts will also be quite useful for the Indoril Templar, and the main ones we shall use are Cyclone, Dragon Aspect, Fire Breath, and Unrelenting Force. When approaching combat, you will want to send your Atronachs into the fray first so that they can distract your foes and deal damage. Then you will insert yourself into the fray and hack and slash to your heart's content, all while being an indomitable tank that blows off even the most hard-hitting blows. Having a follower like Ariana Ieneth will also be very fitting, as the Indoril Templar was once the leader of the Bone Saints and was a proficient commander. And that was the Indoril Templar build. There are very few Great House builds on YouTube, excluding the sexy Telvanni of course, and I hope to change that as I make more videos going over each of the Great Houses of Morrowind. This build video was inspired by my Curious Case of House Indoril video, so if you wish to learn more about the story and legacy of this house, be sure to check the description down below. As always, I would like to thank my channel members for their continued support, and they are Mirak, Sovdark, Will Ernst, The Proud Prince, Luis Eduardo, JJ Ensid, Milani Stilla, Grud, Ranger McKay, Luxie, Carson Friday, Dova 2023, Abdullah the Goat, David Correa, Kirill Gaming, Dalton Rupert, I Love House Halalu, Felix Rianis, Cosmo, Jarinish Evento, Grabowski, Serene Molly, Smooth Weaver Walkthroughs, Anka RMZ, Bane Hellborn, Shinigami James, Gret, Peter Illing, The Ember Raven, and Cat Lassie. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
I suppose you want to be asked nicely. Very well. Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful